Welcome, everyone, to the Wizard of Radical Self-Respect. My name is Jared Mello, and I'm the shepherd of Black Sheep. Shadow is like, you know what? I'm going to jump off the pole right before the live button hits. I'm like, come on, Shadow. What are you trying to do here? Abandon ship? Abandon ship the way Brian Hooker did? That wouldn't be good. Because let's face it here. Lynette Hooker, it did not go down, as Mr. Brian Hooker said. I think we can all be pretty confident in that, can't we, Miss Kim? Hello there, Miss Kim. How are you? We have a couple videos to go over tonight. Not going to be a long night, more than likely, but that's a Brian Entin video. Brian interviewed Lynette's daughter and her boyfriend again. Everyone in the flock of black sheep, they do love Carly's boyfriend. And then Ashleigh did a video. The guest that she had on the other day was pretty good. And we'll see, we'll see if they are closer to pressing charges and making an arrest. Because as I've been telling everyone, I've been reading Matt Murphy's The Book of Murder, and there certainly has been cases where they've charged people when there was a murder at sea without the bodies. Now, the big difference in the case I'm reading about is there was eyewitness testimony, right? So it was a crew of people that did a murder, and they were able to flip one of the people, right? Now, that wasn't the only piece of the puzzle, but it absolutely was a big piece of the puzzle. So that being said, it's not impossible. D says JLR is doing an all-nighter at Nancy's house. Doing what? Doing what, though? Like, what are they doing there? Hello there, Catherine. How are you? As people flow on in here, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Spank that like button. Leave your DNA of choice in the like button. Throw Shadow a like vest the very same way Brian Hooker should have sent one to Lynette Hooker, but did not. Because Brian Hooker was saying, oh, it's going to take a higher authority to get me out of here. And then I always think of the SpongeBob episodes where it says, 1 day later, Brian Hooker goes back to America to spend time with his mother. It's like, holy mackerel. Just like that, stop searching. And as far as we know, he hasn't been back. He hired someone to try to bring the soulmate back, the ship, the soulmate. But that's in custody now. It's now a crime scene now, too, by the way. Hello there, Doug. Welcome. Shadow says, thank you, Autumn. I have my beach-appropriate attire today to go over the case regarding the Bahamas. But let's see what else they all have to say. Oh, we got D and DD. D squared. We love it. And as always, say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. We have a good-sized school of Pisces fish here, too. Brian, welcome. And as always, super chats, super stickers, becoming a channel member, or gifting channel memberships. Great ways to support the channel. They help me to invest in Shadow's Hootie Snack 500, the HNS 500 fund, and soy-free Hootie Snacks too, of course. Becoming a member gives you access to the members-only live streams. That will be Wednesday or Thursday this week. And tell a friend or five about the flock of black sheep. Hello there, Jackie. How are you? Shadow says hello too. And one more thing I wanted to mention, but I already forget what it is. It'll come to me. It'll come to me, the other thing I wanted to mention. Oh, that's what it is. Interviews. If there's other people you would like to see me interview, either in psychology, true crime, mental health, dating, neurodivergency, addiction, let me know. I'm looking for more interviews, so any interesting folks you'd like to see me dive into, explore their minds, definitely let me know. That's right, Miss Kim. But all right, let's jump into this here. Now, this is Brian Entin, of course. Make sure you support Brian Entin's work. Nanny Goat, what is shaking, Nanny Goat? Shadow says hello, too.
Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really, really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. Really, really appreciate all of your support. In this episode, I am getting into the latest on the disappearance of Lynette Hooker. She, of course, is the woman who has not been found in the Bahamas. Her husband, Brian Hooker, claims that she bounced off of their dinghy in rough weather. It's now been more than a month. That was the beginning of April. But a lot of the locals say that his story does not add up. Lynette's family says that his story does not add up. You're going to hear from Lynette's daughter coming up in this episode, what she finds especially suspicious about the entire situation. Also, the latest from the Coast Guard. They have released an official statement about this ongoing criminal investigation. Remember, they have basically impounded Brian Hooker's boat. And there's some new photos of that. So I'm going to get into the latest. There's been a lot of moving pieces behind the scenes. It's all coming up in this episode of Brian Entin Investigates. All right, hey guys. So I want to get into the latest on this situation with Lynette and Brian Hooker. You saw my last episode. I was up in Fort Pierce where Soulmate, the Hooker's sailboat, is now still at the Coast Guard station in Fort Pierce, where we know that they have been going on and off of it. There's been Coast Guard investigators taking pictures, looking at it.
Where is Brian here? Is Brian on location in the Bahamas, or is he just in Florida somewhere?
Evidence, taking stuff off the boat. Really, they even put crime scene tape up around the boat. So this is a very, very active investigation. And I, again, have a source who said that there's a lot of movement behind the scenes and that we should expect to see more movement and more progress in the case in the coming weeks. So I'll keep an eye on it. Just for a little bit of the backstory here, according to Brian Hooker, after leaving shore at Hopetown in the Bahamas around 7:30 in the evening on April 4th, he claims that there was rough waters that caused his wife to fall off of their dinghy. Okay, that's been his story. Brian Hooker says he paddled ashore, arrived at Marsh Harbor around 4 a.m. the next day, and the couple was headed back to their sailboat. Again, it's called the Soulmate, when all of this went down, according to Brian. They're from Michigan, by the way, Brian and Lynette Hooker, but they bought the sailboat, and this was apparently, Lynette's dream to live on the boat and to basically explore, which they were doing in the Caribbean and the Bahamas. And he claims she fell off the dinghy. Okay, but since the very beginning, there's been a lot of questions about that, including from authorities. And the Bahamians even had Brian Hooker in custody for 5 days, questioning him. I mean, they literally kept him in the jail in custody, questioning him before they let him go. Apparently, they didn't have enough evidence to keep him. But there's been suspicions since the beginning, despite Brian Hooker saying from the beginning that he had nothing to do with Lynette's disappearance. Let me read you guys the new Coast Guard statement that came out, and this is sort of the latest from the Coast Guard. And you can kind of read between the lines some of what they're saying here. And they're obviously being careful what they say too, because this is such an active investigation. We know because we saw them going on and off the boat in Fort Pierce at the Coast Guard station. But this is what the Coast Guard says. Special agents with the U.S. Coast Guard Investigative Service, that goes by CGIS, supported by multiple Coast Guard surface and aviation assets, seized the sailing vessel Soulmate approximately 40 nautical miles off the coast of Melbourne, Florida, as part of an ongoing criminal investigation into the disappearance of Lynette Hooker. Let me just stop there for a second. The fact that they're saying ongoing criminal investigation, okay? So they're not saying investigation into the disappearance of Lynette Hooker, accidental drowning investigation. No, they're saying ongoing criminal investigation, which I think is significant. It says the seizure was conducted during a complex surveillance and interdiction operation coordinated by CGIS and operational Coast Guard surface from Sector Miami and aviation assets from Air Station Miami. Following the seizure, the vessel lost engine power and was taken under tow by the Coast Guard cutter Winslow Greaser. The towing operation was transferred to a crew from Coast Guard Station Fort Pierce for transit through Fort Pierce Inlet. So they were doing surveillance on Soulmate. Apparently they were going to it seems like they were going to watch it and follow it until it arrived here in Florida. But the engine must have died on Soulmate or something like that, because they ended up having to tow the boat in. And by the way, it seems that Brian Hooker had someone like a captain, someone maybe he hired, bringing Soulmate back over here from the Bahamas, where it's been since Lynette went missing, to Florida. Brian left the Bahamas after he was released from custody. He said, "I'm never going to leave until I find Lynette," but then pretty much immediately left. And we don't know exactly where he's been. It seems like he's probably in Michigan, where he's from. He mentioned that he wanted to be there for his mom, who was sick. But he has not been with the boat, and it was someone else bringing the boat back here to Florida. The statement goes on to say, the vessel Soulmate is currently in the custody of CGIS as part of an active criminal investigation. Due to the ongoing nature of the investigation, no additional details are being released at this time. And that's interesting too, ongoing nature of the investigation. So again, this is very active. I mean, there are things happening behind the scenes. There are things that they are looking into. There's processing that they're doing on the boat, which is a crime scene. Apparently, they had crime scene tape up. So they're calling it an active investigation due to the ongoing nature of the investigation. No additional details are being released at this time. Anyone with information regarding the disappearance of Lynette Hooker is encouraged to contact the U.S. Coast Guard Investigative Service via CGIS tips. So that's the official statement from the Coast Guard. They released some new pictures too, which is interesting. And I found, Coast Guard's pretty good about dealing with the media, and a lot of times they release photos and video. And I spent a lot of time with the Coast Guard, which I'll get to in a second, but I want to go through some of these new photos that they released. This one shows them behind Soulmate out in the Atlantic Ocean as it was apparently coming towards Florida. Then there's a photo where you can see when they actually boarded the sailboat. Remember, these are federal agents. These are, this is part of the military, the Coast Guard. It's a big deal. So you see where they boarded the sailboat. You can see them tracking the boat from the sky, which with camera technology they have, which I'm going to get into in a second. Then they were towing the boat after it lost power. There's a photo of that. And then finally, the boat with crime scene tape when they started processing it, which this is something you don't see every day. I mean, crime scene tape surrounding a sailboat. And you guys might remember last week I used the kayak to get closer so that I could see Soulmate when it was at the Coast Guard station in Fort Pierce. We weren't allowed to put our drone up. I've seen some other people have been able to put drones up, but Mo, my cameraman, tried to put his up, and there's he's got his license and everything, but there was an official warning. You had to ask for permission, and he never was able to get the permission. It's like literally right next to the Coast Guard base, so they don't really allow drones to fly there. So we weren't able to put the drone up, but luckily there was someone who let us borrow their kayak, and we were able to go see Soulmate that way. And again, this new Coast Guard photo shows that there is literally crime scene tape around the boat. So it is officially a crime scene, and they are...
Well, folks, send good vibes to Nanny. She's having back surgery tomorrow. Shadow sends good vibes as well. The flock of Black Sheep is sending good vibes. Black Sheep Nation is too. So... positive thoughts, it will go well.
Processing it. Again, the Coast Guard's really amazing. I mean, I found them in the past pretty incredible to work with, just from a media perspective. I've gone up with them, I think, 3 times over the last probably 4 years. I've been in their helicopter, and then I went up in one of their planes twice, which this photo that you see of Soulmate, it seems to me this was taken by one of their airplanes. And it looks very similar to what I've seen when I was up in their planes. When I went up, it was because I was doing stories. They were doing surveillance for migrants coming over, and then also search and rescue operations for migrants. And we would go out way down the coast of Florida, all the way down near Key West, and then out there's like islands out there where these migrants would wash up. So that's why I was out with them twice. They were long days. These planes can fly for 10 hours, 8-10 hours. I was out for them for the whole day. But I remember this shot of Soulmate reminded me of what the images look like that they're able to capture from these planes, and they were very strict with us.
This almost looks like a wartime picture where they're about to blow up the ship. If you've seen Ukraine, Russia footage, this is like what the screen looks like before the drone blows something up. Of course, that's not what's happening here. It's a crime scene. But it looks similar.
We weren't allowed to show their equipment, some of their equipment that they have up there, because it's all part of like a homeland security operation when they're doing those migrant flights. But it's the same as when they do search and rescue, and it's the same planes. And the photo of Soulmate stood out to me because I remembered what that looked like when I was up there with them. Just a quick side note, there was this crazy thing when I was with them. You see this, they actually lowered the back of the plane down, hooked me into this harness, and I was able to go stand on the back of the plane, which was like insane. I can't believe I actually had the guts to do this. And we went like right over one of these islands. It was a really, really neat experience, but I gained just like a ton of respect.
Look at Brian in the back of the plane there. Shadow says Brian Entin's got a good job, huh? Look at his News Nation microphone.
For the Coast Guard, with the work that they do every day, it's really hard work. And not only do they, save people and search and rescue with these planes, but they also do investigations, which is exactly what they're doing with Lynette Hooker's disappearance. Now a criminal investigation. And again, you can see this image of the sailboat was taken by one of these planes. So I just kind of wanted to give you guys a little backstory on that. Something else new, Fox Digital spoke with a friend of Brian Hooker's, a guy named Blaine Stevenson. And this is interesting. He says that Hooker spent about 3 hours searching for Lynette, but then returned to his sailboat and stayed on his sailboat for about 24 hours, not searching for Lynette, which again just goes back to sort of what a lot of people are noticing, that he didn't seem to be that concerned about his missing wife, at least according to this man and other people in the area. And this is what he said to Fox Digital. So the incident happened Saturday at 7:30 p.m. He came ashore at 4 a.m. The search and rescue took him out for 3 or 4 hours and brought him back to his boat. He sat on his boat for almost 24 hours until search and rescue brought him his dinghy back. So they're saying he just sat on the boat for 24 hours while Lynette was still missing. At no point...
Sat on the boat for 24 hours while Lynette was still missing. Shadow says, I'm no detective, but that sounds a little bit peculiar. What do you think? Again, it just doesn't seem like it's the person that has any kind of urgency to find Lynette and find her alive. Where's the urgency? Where's the distress? Where's the worry? It seems entirely absent. And then all you hear is his performance in front of the cameras. It's going to take a higher authority to get me to stop looking for Lynette. And then literally the next day, Brian Hooker goes back to America to be with his mother. And I don't know about that one, Jack. It just seems like there's a lot of smoke here. A lot of smoke.
Did he really look at the situation and give anybody any more details than he had at the beginning when he was supposedly in shock? Even if he accepts the fact his wife is gone, does he not want closure? Does he not want redemption? So this is what Blaine Stevenson, according to Fox Digital.
So that would be his only attempt of the defense. He's just in shock. I don't know if I buy that one either. I'm sure that's how he'll try to frame it. Look at this guy. He's got the narc smile. Look at this. Shadow and I are professional face readers, and we can see it. Something in his face. There's a lack of empathy in his face. That's what it is.
A friend of Brian Hooker's said, who's apparently has an issue with the fact that he wasn't out searching for his wife, searched for a couple of hours, and then, according to him, spent 24 hours on the sailboat. Just a reminder, Hooker has not been charged with anything. They held him in the Bahamas again for 5 days, and I think a lot of people thought charges were coming.
Well, Shadow and I, we like a quote that says, you're responsible for your face by the time you're 40. And what that means is your face contorts to your character. And again, you can make an argument this happens even before 42. But I believe it. I think you can see the amount of empathy and concern people have in their faces. And you can tell if someone's an asshole as well, a lot of times, by looking at their face. One day I should do like an experiment, and I should do side by sides and say, okay, see, why does this person look like an asshole? And why does this person look like they're nice and caring? And break it down. Because there is a science to it, by the way. Now, granted, it is certainly shunned, and you're not supposed to be doing it. Like it's kind of like a forbidden thing. But it used to be more of a thing. It used to be more of a thing. And I think what happened was they got worried about it because of a race or fill in the blank with other prejudices. We're not doing it for that reason. We're just doing it for who's an asshole and who's not. That's all. Regardless of race, regardless of gender, who's an asshole, who's not.
Because how often do they keep someone for 5 days and then they let him go? He's now back in the United States. It seems that the investigation in the Bahamas is ongoing, but now there's also this criminal investigation with the U.S. Coast Guard, federal investigation. And I just want to remind you, this is what Brian Hooker posted to Facebook after Lynette went missing. He said, "I am heartbroken over the recent boat accident in unpredictable seas and high winds that caused my beloved Lynette to fall from our small dinghy near Elbow Cay in the Bahamas. Despite desperate attempts to reach her, the winds and currents drove us further apart. We continue to search for her, and that is my sole focus." So that last line he said, "We continue to search for her, and that is my sole focus," seems to be a little bit different than what the friend Blaine Stevenson is now saying to Fox Digital, that he actually searched for a couple of hours and then was just sitting on his sailboat, according to him. So there's been a lot of skepticism around Brian Hooker, and much of that comes from Lynette's daughter, Carly, who my heart goes out to her. And I want to play, I had a conversation with Carly and with her boyfriend, Steve. And I just feel terrible for them. I mean, a lot of other media has interviewed them, but this was my first time talking to them. And I feel so bad for Carly. So I want to play you a little bit of this conversation. Carly and Steve, thank you so much for talking with me. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to tell you, Carly, I'm so sorry for everything you're going through and what's going on with your mom. And, it's just terrible. And there's just something about your mom's, I was thinking this last night. There's something about I obviously didn't know your mom.
I mean, it's the first Mother's Day for her without her mom, right? And Carly reminds me of someone that I knew once in a rehab, actually. When I worked at a rehab, there was a girl that I think was a teen there at the time. She reminds me of her for some reason.
But there's something about like her smile. Like, I think people just feel like a connection to her. Like, she just, in the photos, she looks so like nice, like someone you would just want to talk to. Like, some people just have that vibe.
Yep, definitely.
Show me your shirt if you don't mind. That's awesome.
Yep.
It's really nice. I just wanted to start off by asking you, have you heard? It's really nice.
Let's see what it says. Justice for Lynette, I think it says.
Nice, like someone you would just want to talk to. Like, some people just have that vibe.
Yep, definitely.
Show me your shirt if you don't mind.
Justice for Lynette. Shadow salutes the shirt. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yep.
It's really nice. I just wanted to start off by asking you, have you heard anything new from investigators? Or we know my friend was actually out there yesterday. I wasn't out there, but there was like investigators on the boat. They put crime scene tape up. They were taking things on and off the boat. Have you heard any more about what might be happening?
I don't hear anything at all, honestly. I didn't even know that they were going to take the boat when they got into U.S. waters. I mean, I was hoping that was going to happen, but I wasn't sure. So I'm happy that they are. So I think they're just not really telling us anything because it's an open investigation and they want things quiet. So I understand that. So I honestly just hear anything from Ashleigh Banfield or anything that's on the TV.
Yeah, Ashley's doing a really good job. I've been watching a lot of her episodes, digging into everything. What is the last you heard from Coast Guard investigators?
Usually when I hear something, I tell my Coast Guard contact, and then he replies. But last time I heard from him was about a week ago, and he just asked a couple questions.
For people who haven't been following this really closely, what makes you suspicious of your stepdad? I mean, what raises the alarm bells?
For one, he's already made this threat 2 years ago that this exact thing was going to happen to her, that he would make sure this would happen to her. And he's threatened it, I'm pretty sure, multiple times, and has done actions to her that have hurt her.
So what's the exact threat? I would ask Carly. He threatened to push her off the boat or murder her at sea. Regardless, I mean, I totally believe it. And this is why we also say, if there's accusations like that, you should take it seriously. Don't sweep them under the rug. Don't dismiss them. Don't dare defend, excuse, explain, or rationalize them. No, because this is what can happen. And the other thing is the strangulation. As I always say, 700 to 900% more likely to be murdered if your partner strangles you, if you're a woman. And according to Carly, that happened here in this case too. So just things to remember. Also, though, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Spank the like button. Leave your DNA of choice in the like button. Say hello to the flock of black sheep in the live chat. And super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships. Great way to support the channel. They help me pay for Shadow's soy-free Hootie snacks. And we invest in the Hootie Snack 500. The Hootie Snack 500 is an index fund. And thank you very much for all the support we've gotten so far. And I've seen Sweet Caroline was sending some super chats and super thanks in the comments the other day. So again, shout out to Sweet Caroline for that. Shadow really appreciates it.
So the fact that this is happening now is kind of coincidental, I guess, or it's just funny because you said that you were going to do this and now it's happening. So why wouldn't I just believe your story? I would need more answers than just believing your story at this point.
Yeah, and you were very quick to say you didn't believe the story. I mean, it right from the get-go, it seemed like.
Yeah.
Did your mom ever say anything to you about him?
2 years ago when they broke up in 2024, I went to go visit her in Florida, and she told me that he choked her out and threatened to kill her and throw her overboard so that nobody could find her. So,
did you hear that? Choked her out and threatened to kill her and throw her overboard? I mean, I hope the prosecutor in the case is listening to this because this is big evidence. Now, they'll say it's circumstantial, but it's part of building the case. This is building the case. Strangulation, threats, incongruencies in the story, no sense of urgency. There's a lot of things they're building here, right? They just don't want to jump the gun and make a charge too soon and then have it not stick. So I think they're building their case, and we'll see. We'll see if something happens with it. I think in this case there is. I think in this case there's going to be something that comes. How long? I'm not exactly sure. But maybe in the next month or two. I wouldn't be surprised if within the next month or two there's a charge.
She immediately left after that fight. But then she eventually went back a couple months later. And I'm guessing the fighting persisted.
What was he like when you were around him?
He can be very charming, outgoing, knows how to talk to people. But when he gets irritated, he can be kind of smartassy and just a dick, basically. So there's two sides of him, really.
When was the last time you talked to your mom?
The Friday before she disappeared.
So what did she just say? Basically, Brian Hooker is two-faced. There's a different version of him in private than there is in public. What does that sound like, chat? What does it sound like? Narcissistic, without a doubt. They can be a completely different person behind closed doors than they are in public. They have a public persona, an image. And some people used to argue with me and say, well, everyone's like that. And it's not to the extent that they are. Not to the extent that they are. So that's the difference. Because in public, they might seem very personable, etc. But behind closed doors, they're choking people out and threatening to kill them. Is the average person choking out their partner and threatening to kill them? No. So it's more extreme.
And did she say anything that stood out, or was it just a normal conversation? Or
I was just asking her for advice, and then she was helping me out with that. She doesn't really confide in me in the relationship problems, so it's usually just me whenever I have a conversation I want to talk to them about, I text them.
Yeah. And just from other stories I've covered, I mean, abusive relationships, it can be hard to get away, to get out of. It's like you get kind of stuck sometimes.
Yep.
I'm assuming because they lived on the boat full time.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah,
think?
she
Sorry.
she wanted to buy a house to have like a home base, but she just never got to it.
Did you ever stay with them on the boat?
Yeah, I would go fly wherever they were and spend a few days with them.
What was that like?
It was pretty cool to see new locations. I went to New Orleans, I've been to Key West, and now the Bahamas with them. So it's been pretty fun.
Was it her dream to live on a boat?
Oh yeah, she's always wanted to live on a sailboat and just sail around.
Yeah. Yeah. In the pictures, I mean, some of the older pictures, she looks happy at least at some points,
Oh yeah, she loved being on that boat.
You went to the Bahamas.
Hmm.
What did you learn while you were there? Was there anything that stood out to you while you were talking to people or?
Like after this happened,
Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I meant afterwards. Yeah.
um, just that everyone basically had the same thing to say, that they don't really believe his story because they know the waters around there and it's pretty shallow. Like some places they could just walk and be fine. And they were pretty close to shore where she could have swam a couple feet and stood up. So they're all basically saying about the same thing, and that they hope we get the answers that we're looking for and they give any good input that they have.
What about the police there? Did they give you any information?
No, I talked to Inspector Lewis for about 3 hours, but he was just writing down my side of the story, basically.
Yeah, because for them to keep Brian in custody for 5 days, you would think that they are you know what I mean? That they wouldn't just do that if they just thought, his story was the truth.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything from him?
No, I haven't talked to him since he told me that night. He's tried to reach out a few times, but I don't want to respond.
Do you have any idea where he is?
Last I knew, he was about us, but I don't know if he's still there or not.
In Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know? So I was trying to understand. Did he hire someone to bring the boat back? Is that?
I'm guessing so because I've never seen them before.
But it was your mom's boat, right?
Yeah.
She paid for it.
It was both of theirs.
It was both of theirs. So what do you want to happen next?
I just hope that the Coast Guard and the FBI can do their extensive search to see if he was on the boat that night, to see if his story is still true. But because it seems like we get pictures and people saying like the water's calm there. We got pictures of the waters was calm. So it's just, I forgot what the question was.
No, sorry. You've been through a lot. I'm sorry. And I feel bad with like Mother's Day just happening and everything. So I understand. No, the question was just like, what do you want to see, happen next? Obviously there's,
sorry.
No, you're good.
Hope that they can just do their search and find anything, if there's anything to find, and knowing that we did the best we could is what I'm looking for right now.
If you don't mind, tell me a little more about your mom. I feel like you hear so much about what happened, but what's she like?
She's very adventurous and she loved to sail around and
Shadows said to me, her boyfriend's really contributing a lot to the conversation here, Shadow says. Shadow says he should pipe down. He's talking too much.
adventure new things. She was also very crafty. She liked to sew. She sewed biminis for sailboats for people. She did it a lot for her boat too. Like you can see the windows on the side of the boat, and those are things that she's sewn together, the blue windows. And she's just very crafty, and she loved to exercise. She exercised a lot. She did yoga on the boat, and if there was like a workout place around, she would go join like their boot camp or something. So, and we also ran together a lot. So she was also very active.
Steve, this has got to be hard for you too.
It is. Her birthday was a week ago, a week before Mother's Day, and then it was Mother's Day, and it's just hard on her. It's hard to see someone you care about in pain. We're just looking for a natural conclusion. We're just trying to get to the bottom of this, and we're just hoping we find something somewhere.
Yeah, the not knowing is, it's like
it's hard to grieve.
Yeah, how are you supposed to sort of sort that out in your mind when you don't even know what happened?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think he'll ever tell the truth, tell the full story?
We're thinking of eventually down the line, if it comes to it, giving him like an ultimatum to be like, tell us where she is, and then maybe less sentencing if you get sentenced. But I highly doubt he will because of the chance that he could get away with it. So I don't know.
Well, and the fact that he said he would stay in the Bahamas, like,
I would say anything they do, they should certainly run it by the prosecutor or the DA. That would be my suggestion.
to search for her, but it seemed like he left pretty
He left
quickly.
4 hours later. Yeah.
I was pretty pissed and shocked when I found that out, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad he wasn't there, so I didn't accidentally run into him and say something I'd regret or something, because I don't want to see him right now.
Yeah. What was your relationship like with him?
He was always in my life since I was 4, so since I could remember, and he was always just another parent. He would like do most of the groundings and most of the talking for it, and mom just kind of let him do whatever, I guess. And he was pretty harsh on groundings for no reason, really, for me being a kid. But I don't know. He was just another parent.
Yeah. I guess I was going to say, did you ever think he was capable of doing something really bad?
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I've seen it multiple times and heard about it.
Well, again, I'm sorry, Carly, for everything you're going through. I really am.
Thank you.
Your Mother's Day message was just like, made me feel so sad. Like, just, I don't know. Again, something about your mom's pictures. I think people are connecting to her.
Yeah.
She was a free spirit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you both for your time. We'll
No
help
problem.
keep the story out there.
Thank you.
Really appreciate Carly and Steve for taking the time to talk with me. Appreciate you guys for following this story. Ashleigh Banfield, and you heard Carly mention it, has just been all over the story. I mean, she's been covering every little detail. So if you're interested in more, check out her channel because she's literally just like all over it. So I'm kind of just covering the sort of the surface, but I wanted to get at least aid in getting the word out, keeping the story alive. And again, you heard from Carly. It's just so sad. And I'll just reiterate what I said to Carly. I mean, there's something about Lynette's photos that you just can't help but feel a connection to her. She just looks like so happy and so vibrant, and someone you'd want to talk to, and someone who looks so friendly, and just wanted to enjoy her life on the sailboat, and to think that something really terrible likely happened. And she's missing now. So again, Brian Hooker hasn't been charged with anything. None of us know really what happened, but hopefully investigators will be able to figure it out. And if anybody can do it, it seems it'll be that U.S. Coast Guard investigative team, because they are, amazing. The Coast Guard is amazing. So if anybody has any information, call the U.S. Coast Guard. Their investigation is ongoing. I'll keep you guys posted if I hear anything. I've got one good Coast Guard source, and got a couple other stories that I'm working.
I mean, it's really just a matter of, is a body found, or maybe they overhear something. I don't even know what information they would have to give to them, to the Coast Guard at this point, unless a body's found.
On right now that I should have for you this week. I think I mentioned to you guys last time I'm going to be in New York City. I'm filling in for Chris Cuomo. He has a show on News Nation, but sometimes I fill in anchor, which is cool.
Brian Entin filling in Chris Cuomo's shoes. Brian Entin's moving up in the world.
Cool. It's different for me. Go up to New York, wear a suit. You guys know I like being out in the field, and this is more my element, just talking to regular people and, not so much in the studio guy, but it's pretty cool when I get to fill in. It's a good experience. So I'm going to be going up to New York City to do that for a couple of days. But I'll keep you guys posted if there's any developments. Again, I really appreciate you for subscribing, following.
All right. Make sure you check out Brian Entin. Most of you already do, so we know how to say it. Make sure you like this video because likes are free. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Make sure you spank that like button. And throw Shadow Hero like vest the same way that Brian Hooker should have to Lynette Hooker, but did not. And of course, this
Hey everyone, I'm Ashleigh Banfield. This is Drop Dead Serious. Thank you for being here.
Of course, this is our friend, Ashleigh Banfield. Make sure you support her channel as well. We have a prosperity mentality around here.
Boy, do I have something to tell you tonight. I just learned something I had heard about before, could never confirm, and now I'm hearing it from probably the best source, or at least one of the best sources I've had on the story of Lynette Hooker missing in the Abacos in the Bahamas. You already know that her lying husband, Brian Hooker, says she just bounced off the back of the dinghy and I never saw her again, right? And then everybody has had to, launch hell and high water to try to find Lynette, only to realize his story is so preposterous. Now we're really finding all the evidence to prove him wrong. And I just found something. As it turns out, somewhere around 9:30 at night, and that would be more than 2 hours after Brian and Lynette left the Abaco Inn, and only minutes later, she bounced off the back of the boat and he floated to Marsh Harbor. And you know the rest of the story. 9:30, post 9:30 at night, when nobody has been on Soulmate, right? Their 46-foot sloop that they live aboard for the last 4 years. That's where the dinghy was headed when all hell broke loose. They never made it to Soulmate. Well, around 9:30 at night, a witness reported hearing a massive splash off of that boat, because that boat was only parked about 100 yards offshore. And there are some lovely homes right there.
So a massive splash. What do you think it could have been, this massive splash? And again, a massive splash close to these homes, I wouldn't think that would be a body, because if that's what was going on, I'm pretty sure Brian Hooker would go out to sea to do that. Now, a good thing to think about in the case is, I would be wondering, is the SS Soulmate, is it missing an anchor? Because if it's missing an anchor, that's often how the people will send you overboard and then tie you to an anchor so you don't rise. No evidence. You'd have to go out to sea for that, of course. But I'll be curious if that's what happened. Now, he said this happened on the dinghy, but you never know. It doesn't mean that's where it happened, right? We can't take his word for it in this case.
And that witness, she heard a big splash. And it was so significant that it registered with her. Not only that, I have a little more detail about those flares. Remember the flares that a group of witnesses said that they saw a flare around 8 o'clock at night? The timing may be off, but there's more resolution to the flare story now. And it's about the direction of the flare. Because I've always said if a flare went up into the sky, everybody would have seen it. We would have had so many more reports. But now I'm finding out why we may not have. All of this comes to us from Jim Todd, who is a volunteer with Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue. I have said this about them before. They are entirely volunteer. They are entirely donation based. Please give generously to Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue, because those guys are heroes, and Jim Todd is a hero. He is a saint in the story of getting justice for Lynette Hooker. Jim Todd was one of the first people to pull Brian up onto the rescue boat after he'd been marooned on shore at 4:00 in the morning after floating across the Sea of Abaco after losing his wife. You know the bullshit story. Jim Todd rescued this guy, brought him up onto the rescue vessel and said, let's go find your wife. Went to Soulmate with him right away. And he's got something to say about the timing, about when they got up next to Soulmate and what happened within the hour that they were there. It is big news. It is coming in just a moment. You're going to hear from him. The discrepancy about Brian Hooker telling his mother-in-law that he beached up on Marsh Harbor after a terrifying night at sea, having no power because Lynette bounced out with the keys. Bullshit. And then when he was beached up on Marsh Harbor, he went knocking on 2 doors. Nobody answered. And then flagged down a vehicle who just took off without him. Well, Jim Todd is about to tell you why that too is 100% preposterous.
I wonder, just like with the Nancy Guthrie case, we said the perp could be watching the live streams. I wonder if Brian Hooker watches some of this stuff. I wonder if Brian Hooker's sitting there drinking a beer, muttering to himself about Ashleigh Banfield, and goes, that Ashleigh Banfield. Shadow says that's probably what's happening, that he's probably sitting there with a Budweiser or whatever he drinks, and it's like, God damn, Ashleigh Banfield won't leave me alone.
Almost impossible, in fact. Totally implausible. Far-fetched. Inconceivable. These are the words from a stoic and mindful rescue officer who said the story that Brian Hooker told his mother-in-law about trying to get help doesn't work. You're going to hear him say every reason why and tell you logistically why it couldn't have happened that way. And while all of this new information is coming in, I can tell you this. Everything that you saw at the Coast Guard station in Fort Pierce, Florida, the pictures that we got, first the pictures we got of them towing the Soulmate in, and then putting it up at the dock, then CGIS agents, United States Coast Guard Investigative Service, those agents going on and off the boat, carrying things, wrapping it in crime scene tape. Well, guess what? Word is that they got a gold mine, forensic gold mine. Like, shit is getting real, Brian Hooker. First of all, we know that they had computers and tablets, everything on board. We knew that. We already knew that. All we wondered was, did he take those things off? Because he had 4 days after Lynette went missing, to the point where he went into detention and then got seriously scared about being in the Bahamas and bounced right out of there. What was he able to do to the boat? What did he take out of there? If he took anything, because he's not charged with anything, right? Yet. Tick, tock. But there was a lot on that boat. A lot. Like, we know for a fact, the 2 engines that we've seen with our own eyes, those have telemetrics, those models. Basically, you can hook them up to your phone to say, how much time do I have left on my electric engine and all the rest. So 2 engines. I wonder if he still had one on board. I wonder if maybe one could be switched out for the other and then put back on to make it look like it didn't go anywhere. Bahamians still have the dinghy and one of the engines. I wonder if they were able to get an engine down in the hold when they raided the boat. They sure carried a lot of stuff off board. And you know what? Brian was a, how do I say this, tech nerd geek, geeking out, networking the boat, Lynette said in one of her discussions with family. Yeah, so there's a lot on that boat. And from what we are hearing, it was a gold mine for investigators. I want you to now listen to this incredibly insightful conversation. It is the 3rd time I have now spoken with Jim Todd from Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue. Give generously, please. And each time he calls me to say that he's just learned more information that opens up a whole other can of worms. And boy, is this a can of worms. Here's my conversation with Jim. Jim, the latest information that we received from Darlene Hamlet, that's Lynette's mom, was that Brian told her that after he washed up on shore in Marsh Harbor, he knocked on 2 doors that didn't answer. What are the chances that that actually happened?
The chances of that are essentially zero, because where we found the dinghy and where we observed him standing next to the dinghy early on that Sunday morning, we have a clear location of where that is in Marsh Harbor. And it is nothing but scrub bush, very thick scrub bush directly to the west. And if you walked a great distance, hundreds of yards through thick brush, there's nothing there. There's eventually a little commercial building. And again, this would have been happening at 4 o'clock on Sunday morning. There would be no lights back there. It would be like making a decision to walk through the deepest, darkest jungle, heading due west into the island. Where the other option is, if you wash up on this shore in your dinghy, for the last 30 minutes, you will have seen, or even longer, you would have seen the boatyard at Calcutta 150 yards to the north. And that boatyard is extremely brightly lit up at night. I mean, it's a landmark at night. That boatyard is so lit up. So if you're coming across the water, whether you're being blown by the wind or blown and also paddling, the boatyard is a giant beacon. That's where to go. And if you were to get washed up on the beach, given the choice of going a reasonably short distance along the shore to the extremely bright lights and every reason to believe that there would be civilization and assistance, that's what you would do. The alternative would be to go south, where there was almost inaccessible and no houses for a great, great distance, or to go west a great distance through the bush. Virtually impossible.
So those were his choices if he washed up on that island. And which did he do? He made the choice that didn't make sense, is what they're saying.
So I'm trying to sort of get a beat on Brian, making sure that, I think one of his texts even to you was that, did you check there's a subdivision back there? What is he referring to? Because I have heard that there is a subdivision around there somewhere, but where is it and how accessible is it?
Yeah, that's a little bit different. That is further south from where the boat is. There is a community called Sweetings Village. And I might speculate that there's 30 houses in this area. Roads come from the main street in Marsh Harbor out toward the shore. They don't come right up to the shoreline, but they come up near the shore. And so there is a community there, but you might remember that the green flotation device was found a couple of 100 yards south of the dinghy. And then Sweetings Village was in that area. But there's water inlets there that you wouldn't be able, from the dinghy, you wouldn't be able to walk straight to that community because there's a little water inlet. And again, it's pitch black. And if you're stumbling your way south along the shore, it would be just virtually impossible to go 300, 150, 200 yards south in the pitch black along the shore with no beacon or nothing drawing you in. And then you would have hit an inlet and you would have again had to have turned west into the island and go through more jungle to get directed back in. So that subdivision would not have been a reasonable approach direction to go in at 4 o'clock on Sunday morning. And to your point, when he made a reference to me in a text message about the subdivision, if I recall correctly, it was in the context of where we found the flotation device.
Yeah, interesting that he knew right away that there was this subdivision near the flotation device and was so surprised that the flotation device would float all the way across the Sea of Abaco with him just a couple hundred yards away.
That was an odd statement when he said it's, I think he may have used the word incredible. He says it's incredible. What was the noun that he used? It's incredible that it was only 150 yards from me the whole time. It didn't strike me as all that incredible because that's the way the wind was blowing. And yeah.
Right? That's the flotation pattern, unless you didn't float there, or maybe you placed it there. So, I mean, I think it is so critical to just summarize what you just said. If you're really truly floating with no power and you are marooned and you are coming up on shore, presumably you've had a couple of hours watching those lights getting closer and closer. I think he might have even at some point have said that he tried to paddle to get towards the boatyard. And you would know full well, if you're trying to get to the boatyard, paddling or hoping to get to where bright lights are instead of dark jungle, your first inclination would not to be to walk away from the lights.
No,
it would be to walk towards the civilization.
Right. It's overwhelmingly obvious. It would be like if someone said, I need to walk 100 miles to the east, but I'm going to walk 13,000 miles to the west and end up in the same place. It was just overwhelmingly obvious. That's where civilization is. It's so well lit up that that's where help is going to be. And it's just incomprehensible that somebody would not go toward the light when the dinghy was only about 150 yards, if I recall. Maybe a little bit longer, further.
Yeah.
But
What Brian said he did was go the other way, which makes no sense. He went away from the light. He went to the dark instead of going to the light. And that just makes no sense.
150 yards.
By the way, brings me to the point where if you were going to, he did say something to Blaine, I think at some point, Blaine Stevenson, he said, I had to really bushwhack my way through. I'm paraphrasing here, but effectively what I recall from the statement was I really had to get through the thicket, getting through all of this jungle to get to that boatyard. Couldn't you just go right along the shore?
Yeah. And you would have gone straight along the shore. The shore would have been rough. But as I recall, if there is brush that comes out all the way to the shore, it's just small little growths out to the shore. It's mostly walking along rocks to the boatyard area.
He also mentioned something to Darlene about the rocks being very sharp on his feet. And I remember you telling me something very specific about what Brian was wearing when you rescued him that morning, just a few hours after he went up on the shore. What was he wearing that sort of doesn't go well with the whole...
So again, to be clear, this is the guy that rescued Brian. So this is one of the first people to see him after everything that's happened here.
description of the rocks being sharp on his feet?
He was wearing, I think the phrase that people use is sliders, but like a flip flop.
Slides.
Slides. Okay. He was wearing slides, and they're fairly common down here. What maybe people would think of as flip flops or something like that. Some of the rock can be rough, and in pitch dark, it would be challenging to walk across the rock. Sometimes people refer to it as moon rock because it's kind of spiky from thousands of years of erosion. But the flip flops or the slides would have made it, very practical to work your way across the rocks. You certainly wouldn't decide to go inland through the almost impenetrable bush versus staying on the rocks on the shore.
and you'd keep your slides on while going over all that rough rock. And by the way, Nathan has showed us incredible video of what that rock really looks like. It does look very sharp. You keep your slides on.
Sure. Yeah, you would definitely keep them on.
So Jim, just again to revisit the option for a slides clad Brian Hooker washing up on shore would be to go to the bright lights of the civilization off to the right about 150 yards that he's been watching as he's been floating slowly closer and closer to Marsh Harbor, or to go into the blackness, which if you look from Google Maps, you might say, sure, there's a subdivision close by. But realistically and topographically, if you're a local who knows better, it's almost unreachable on foot from where he landed that dinghy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's almost like you pose the question as option one and option two. There really isn't an option two. If you're 150 yards from the bright lights, you obviously would go to the bright lights versus the dark bush.
Yeah, I have a much more coarse way of saying it. I say it's bullshit. I'm sure you have a more eloquent way of putting it. What would that be?
Inconceivable might be a way of saying it. It's inconceivable that someone would go either west or south when there's a extremely well lit boatyard 150 yards to the north.
Inconceivable, he says. Bullshit, Ashleigh Banfield says that someone would go away from the light and towards the dark. And I agree. Unless, of course, he's lying or doing some other nonsense, right?
Talk to me a little bit about the idea of knocking on doors. Let's just say he made the inconceivable trip. Would there only be 2 doors to knock on? Because I thought there were close to 30 in that subdivision.
Yeah, there's something like 30. I would just make a guess. There's 3 long streets from the more major street along the subdivision, the distance of the subdivision, and there's houses on both sides. And if someone were to get onto these paved roads, you would go to the first house and knock on the door, and then you would just walk up the street. And this street is fairly long. Each one of these 3 streets is fairly long. But once you're on the street, you would stay on it and just knock on doors. Now, it's not like a tight subdivision, so it's not like there's a house every quarter acre. But you just walk up the street knocking on doors until you roused somebody. You wouldn't try 2. Right. You wouldn't try 2 doors in this neighborhood and then turn around and go the other way.
All the way back to the boatyard.
Right, back through the difficult terrain that you would have had to cross to get to the subdivision.
Right. And let's just say you decided not to go through that horrible journey through the thickets and the inlet that you'd have to cross. You decide.
And by the way, if you're watching, did you like the video yet? Press 1 if you did not like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. So spank the like button. Throw Shadow a like vest. The same way Brian Hooker should have sent one to Lynette Hooker, but did not. Shadow knows to go towards the light. Brian Hooker did not. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting channel memberships, great ways to support the channel. They help me to pay for Shadow the Night Owl's soy-free Hootie Snacks. And we also invest it in the Hootie Snack 500. It's a special index fund. And thank you for all the support we've gotten so far.
To go out via the roadway. That is a hell of a long walk to go out via the roadway. Yes. Yeah, none of it makes sense. But then also, these are homes that are occupied. These aren't like big, expensive vacation homes that people are sometimes in for a month or so a year. These are people who live there in these homes in Marsh Harbor.
Yeah, absolutely. These are not vacation homes. They are real people who live and work here. There are hardworking Bahamians who this is their life, and they're here all the time.
And they would have answered the door to a man who was in distress, who had just been marooned on the beach, on the shore of Marsh Harbor.
Yeah, I mean, they would have answered the door and given help, and if they were concerned, they would have called the police and brought help.
Yes. let's talk about this vehicle, the mystery man that I put out an appeal to on the podcast. If it was you, call me. I don't expect a call anytime soon. What did you make of this story that I waved down a passing car 4 a.m. in a remote area of Marsh Harbor where I don't know that there are any roads near where he washed up, and the car just took off?
Extremely far-fetched. I mean, again, the probability approaches zero because, again, at 4 a.m. on Sunday morning, on these streets in Sweeting's Village, and also a street a little bit further north, I don't know the name of it, but it's a street with an industrial building on it. At 4 a.m. in the morning, there's not going to be anybody out. And generally speaking, everybody down here is very helpful, and it's a small community. And if someone were standing in the road that appeared to be in distress, you would stop. And at the very least, you'd stop and roll down the window a little bit and have some communication, and then use your telephone to bring them aid. So
yeah, you'd call the police, you do something.
Yeah. If the statement, well, yeah, it's hard to even refer to statements when they get so far-fetched, but to say that he made it through the bush to a street and attempted to wave someone down, as we understand it, it's just extremely far-fetched.
Well, and let's remind everybody again, the community in the Abacos is very small, and it is not 1970s New York City where you might drive by someone in distress.
Right. And this story is well known that, as you said, if someone saw themselves being waved down and then didn't stop for fear, they would probably step forward now at this point.
And say, it was me. I was that one. I was afraid. I didn't stop, and I wish I had. Yeah.
As the story, as we understand it, it's extremely far-fetched.
Yeah. What's frustrating, Jim, so much of this is frustrating, but what's frustrating when I speak with you is how hard you and your fellow volunteers at the Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue give generously, please. I'm going to say it again, please. It's entirely volunteer. Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue. How hard you all worked for days looking for Lynette based on false information, incomplete information, obfuscation, and then a guy who was sitting on the porch of the Conch Inn for 2 days and not going and getting a boat to join in the search.
That's quite a contrast, isn't it? And people here, I mean, we had people call who, a Bahamian, a second homeowner who lives on Elbow Key, and they know my wife, Cindy, and they called Cindy and said, our family has property on a string of keys near Toulouse Cut, and there's a blown out building from years back and has a cistern on it. And I've just got a feeling about that cistern. Somebody should check it out. And so Cindy got in her kayak and paddled a long way. I don't know, maybe 3 miles. So she paddled in her kayak 3 miles down to this string of keys. And she, at this point, she's 5 feet away from the shore. She can get as close as she wants to. And she circled these 3 keys right up close, and then went to the key that had the blown away dwelling from many years ago. And she could see that the cistern was completely overgrown access to the cistern was completely overgrown. And that told her she didn't need to make an attempt to go find the cistern because it was essentially inaccessible. But I just say that as a point of people are working hard to try and think about where people should be searching, and they're communicating to people who have an ability to do it. And so Cindy went and did it, and consequently was able to presumably eliminate that as a potential area. And that's just one instance of many. I was really happy to see how thoroughly Nate had looked at the northwest side of Lubbers, because I think that is a number one or number two highest likely area. If a body is buried, that's one of the high likelihood areas.
Do you guys think the body's buried? Press 1 if you think the body's buried. Press 2 if you don't think it's buried, it's something else. And optional if you don't think it's buried, where do you think it is? So press 1 if you think it's buried on one of the many islands there. Press 2 if it's not. And if it's not, open-ended, where do you think it is instead?
And to the credit of not me, but other colleagues on fire and rescue, on Sunday morning, one of our colleagues had drones flying all over the northern tip of Lubbers Quarters, on the west side and on the northern tip and on the east side and across the middle of the island. And he was able to navigate the drones right up close to the shore. So there was a thorough look for anything that had been washed up. And so,
well, and of course, what everyone's looking for is what they believe at the time is a woman who went overboard and maybe stranded and needing help. Or God forbid, might be a body that washed up on the shore. They're not looking for potential grave sites, which is a very different kind of look.
That's right. That's right. And that's actually, if there's a body buried, I think that one of the higher probability places, I believe they have sent cadaver dogs there, would be the northwest shore on Elbow Key of a development called the Sanctuary. And it's right, you're familiar with it, you've seen it, when you're going west out of the White Sound Channel, that little peninsula on the left. They're doing a lot of road grading, a lot of palm tree planting, and a lot.
I somehow doubt she's buried. Not impossible, but I doubt it. I would bet dropped at sea. That would be my bet. And then hope that the sharks and wildlife get her, or she gets anchored down somewhere, one or the other.
A lot of churning the ground. And I have walked that area, driven it, and many others have also. And the challenge there is that everything looks like a grave, because all of the dirt has been...
It's all disturbed.
It's all disturbed, right. Yeah. And I don't know it firsthand, but I understand that the U.S. Coast Guard cadaver dogs did go there.
Well, I know for a fact, having seen them, because I was there at the time, they were looking at that entire area. Again, as you exit White Sound Channel, turn left, turn south. There's sort of a bunch of mangroves and like low-lying cliff-like, rock formations along the water.
Yeah.
And they were very, very interested in that spot. It's a matter of access, accessing it, which was tricky for them. And one dog, can only do so much.
Right.
Those puppy dogs get tired and overworked in the hot Bahamian sun. So my hope is that there will be additional search.
In the hot Bohemian sun, she sounds like Sebastian from The Little Mermaid. In the hot Caribbean sun, it's hotter under the water.
And I'm crossing my fingers for that. That's a story that's coming in the days to come. But, Brian said something to you about Lubbers, didn't he?
Yeah, refresh my memory if there's something specific you're thinking of. But he said,
I think he told you that his plan was to land on Lubbers and then break into some houses or something of that sort.
Right. So on Sunday morning, I was on the front of the rescue boat. He and I had a lengthy discussion about where he believes Lynette went over the side on the dinghy. And in the process of trying to identify that, he said he drifted to the northern tip of Lubbers. He finally threw out an anchor, and he stayed anchored there approximately an hour. He fired one flare or two flares he fired a flare, one or more. I can't speak to the quantity, but he fired a flare from.
He told Darlene he fired 2 flares, and there's information that he only fired 1. That the actual flare may have only fired 1. I don't have that 100% confirmed, but there is information that only 1 flare went out of that gun. But he said to Darlene that he fired 2.
Right. So he fired a flare or a combination of flares, and then eventually he told me, and so I had my 1 broken oar, and I decided I would paddle to the northern tip of Lubbers and find a house and break in and use the telephone to call for help. And when I raised the anchor to get to Lubbers, I was unable to get to.
This guy speaks at the cadence of Brew Crew over 50. It's actually neck and neck. Who speaks slower, him or them?
To make land, and then consequently got blown west to where he came up on the beach. That's what he.
Can I ask you something about that? I have not boated over the northern part of Lubbers Quarters. However, others who have told me that there is a massive shoal that goes out, that it is extremely shallow all over the northern tip. So if you're at the northern tip of Lubbers, you could theoretically get out and stand.
Yes, probably 50 yards out, there's a good chance that you could stand up. It's very shallow. No one in a boat would go close to the northern tip of Lubbers because it's known to be short. And
All right, so this guy's a little bit faster than Brew Crew over 50. But Shadow likes Brew Crew over 50 too, especially when he has his buddy the Eagle in the right-hand corner, the bald eagle. But he hasn't had that for a while, so this Shadow has been disappointed by the Eagle's absence.
to be shallow. And then from that point, the northern tip of Lubbers, as you go west, there's then a massive sandbar that heads toward Marsh Harbor. And a bigger boat would not loop around to the west side of Lubbers. But if you were in a dinghy, it would be, if you're in a dinghy with a motor,
You could do that and more.
then it would be easy to
Simple.
loop around.
So, and the other thing is for people who aren't boaters or liveaboards or cruisers or sailors or anything, all the words you want to ascribe to people who spend a lot of time on boats in areas where they become familiar, comfortable, enjoy, and then move on. If you're in a keelboat that draws about, I'm just going to guess that a 46-foot sloop draws about 4 to 6 feet.
That's right.
Minimum.
He actually mentioned that when we talked. He said his boat drew about 5 feet.
Okay, so I'm right on. And that was a real guess. You're going to know this. You are going to know where these very shallow shoals are and sandbars are because you are sailing in the Abacos. And this is a very key part of the Abacos. It's not like you just wouldn't know that if you're drifting over it at night.
No, that's exactly right. If you were in a 43-foot sailboat and you're coming through an area for the first time and you're enjoying your vacation and you're cruising and you have a 5-foot keel, 5 feet is actually kind of deep in our area. You really
Yes.
have to pay attention. And he would know that. He would have known that if he had been here for 2 weeks because he would have already hit bottom and realized, okay, I really have to be circumspect. And that west side of Lubbers on a chart and visually, when you're looking at it from a distance, is extremely appealing. I mean, it would be a magnet of, I've got to anchor back here behind Lubbers on the west side. It's just so pristine.
Visually appealing, not so much on the chart.
You would look at it in the chart and say, oh, no, I can't do that. I mean, it would be a clear no-go. And you wouldn't have to be very experienced or sophisticated to know that you can't get there by
Oh,
the boat.
you mean like a guy who is able to text you saying ebb tide, slack tide, midnight tide? Someone who knows the tides, to use that kind of terminology, would know enough about depth in a very appealing spot to say, we've been by that place a bunch of times, crossing Sea of Abaco from Marsh Harbor over to Elbow Key.
Right.
You got to be really careful and avoid that spot.
Yeah. And there is, on the northwest tip of Lubbers, there are two little beaches that by observation on either by observation on a chart or maybe even more clearly on Google Maps on your phone, you can see that they're beaches. And if you're looking for something with softer sand versus rock, there's an attraction there if that's what you were looking for.
Well, and Nathan is looking. When looking, it all depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for Lynette's dry bag, if you're looking for Lynette's bathing suit cover up, if you're looking for her Conch Republic headscarf, or if you're looking for what looks like potentially a grave. And that's really hard in the sand. But I will say this, anyone who's out looking should be watching very, very closely. And this is a very macabre topic, but you should be watching very closely for some kind of concavity, some kind of indentation in the sand, because as a body that might be buried decomposes, they break down and the sand or earth above them is displaced and often falls.
Some body burial knowledge by Ashleigh Banfield. So if you're ever searching for dead bodies on a beach, look for the concaved area because the bodies will break down. How about that?
That's why you can sometimes see where a shallow grave is, because it's not even with the rest of the earth. It droops in where the body has, displaced that earth. So
Sure.
if anyone's out looking.
And again, I mean, considering these cadaver dogs can smell 30 feet beneath the surface, that would have been a poor choice for him to bury the body, if he indeed did do it, right? That's why I would think off to sea, more than likely. I would doubt being buried.
Make sure to look for that, and maybe some brush that looks, piled very unnaturally on top of one spot, not what the wind or the surf would bring in, but somebody would actually physically have to pile something in a formation like that.
And, if somebody had some digging to do on the shore, maybe it would take an hour. And that's why the story of I anchored there for an hour in case the dinghy had been observed. But
it's a really good point.
The problem is that, well, maybe not the problem. The challenge is the story that he's told is so obviously cumulatively, obviously not true.
I go further. I say preposterous.
Right. I mean, I had math training in my past, and it's a statistical issue of, to believe his story, you have to believe this and this and this and this and this. And then statistics, you have to multiply them together. And when you multiply fractions together, it becomes an increasingly smaller number. So the believability of falling out in broad daylight, swimming away from the boat in broad daylight, and deciding not to throw a life jacket out when there's life jackets in the bottom of the boat getting in the way, and not throwing an anchor out until you've drifted, and all those come up to the probability approaches zero.
Oh, I'll add to you, if you're driving, which he says Lynette was, in terrible seas, and yet she's not the usual driver, you're the one who would be driving. But okay, let's give him.
Oh, wow. So in a random Bigfoot point, Christy knows someone that she said there was a portal that they went in and out of. It was a family, and there was two, and a young one, I guess. And she said the young one would eat all the food in her fridge. Maybe you seem open-minded, Christy. How about that? Stephen King would believe in that kind of thing. He believes in walk-ins. Anyone who's read the Dark Tower series and other of his books, he talks about that, and some of his books tie together sometimes. That's why it's called the Stephen King universe. But could there be portals and walk-ins I mean, maybe. It's one of those things that I don't completely rule out. And perhaps it would explain some of it. Or maybe she's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I don't know. We have to see. The Shining, the book. It's a great book, too. Also, please remember to like the video because likes are free. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. And as always, super chats, super stickers, and becoming a channel member or gifting memberships, great ways to support the channel. They help me get Shadow the Night Owl's soy-free Hootie Snacks, and we invest it in the Hootie Snack 500. 12 likes to 100, Wow tells me. Wow, life is rough says 12 to 100. So we better at least get to 100. I agree, Ramza.
That if she's about to bounce out, her hand is on the throttle and the other hand is likely stabilizing herself on the pontoon. And somehow both of those hands, as she's bouncing out, are able to grab the lanyard with the electric key on it and the dry bag, which is likely in the well of the dinghy, because it's one of those longer strapping ones and it would really kind of displace you and make your weight uneven if you had it strapped on you while you're driving. Most people don't put a cross bag on while driving a dinghy like that. They put it in the bottom of the boat, especially if they're driving in conditions like that. So again, I mean, every ounce of what he says is garbage.
And when you have, and all of those things have to be true for the story to be true. And that's what makes it so diminishingly likely. However, on the other side, all of the potential things that he could have done, or there's so many possibilities. The probability of any one of them is relatively small, except now, statistically speaking, we're not multiplying the probability of each one. We're adding the probability because we're saying it could have been this, or she could be buried here, or, and when you use the word or, then you add the probabilities together. And then you get this collection of potential stories, and collectively, one of them is true. And it may be that we don't have the imagination yet to get to the right story.
Well, it's like Puff the Magic Dragon to get to the story that he tells. Think all those natural products you're buying are from wholesome mom and pop companies? Not quite. Many have been bought out by mega corporations and private equity firms who hijack the brand. Click the link right there. Van Man, real ingredients, no exceptions. I do want to ask you, when you came back to Soulmate, having rescued this marooned Brian Hooker from Marsh Harbor, I remember you saying he got up on your vessel, the rescue vessel, sometime around 7:30 or so in the morning. What time do you think you got up to his sailboat and then tied your rescue vessel up alongside Soulmate, at which point he scrambled above and then, messed around with that air conditioning unit, presumably to get a hide key, because he said he had to break into his own boat because Lynette had the keys. What time do you think that might have been that, he's getting up on board and then getting down below with that police officer?
I recall pretty clearly that we left Marsh Harbor with Brian Hooker and the police officers approximately 7:25. It's a pretty close on a boat. It's a pretty quick trip, and we would have been tied up to the side of his boat in the range of 7:45.
So he's getting up on board now around 7:45 and tinkering with the air conditioner, again, presumably to get the hide key to open up and break into his own boat to go down below with the police officer. That would have taken how long?
Oh, I remember it was maybe for him to gain access, from tinkering to gaining access, probably less than a minute, not very long.
Okay, quickly. All right. So about 7:45, give or take a few minutes.
Yeah.
He's going down below with the officer.
That's right. And
he's down there till 8:45.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong estimate on my part, but that's what I would guess at. Yes.
I've measured that up against his AIS, which went, so it's looked at by my ship tracking as a vessel event, but at 9:29 p.m. the night before it went out, and at 8:34 a.m. it went back on. And so it's entirely possible as he's coming back out with the police officer, he could have switched back on his AIS and walked out above deck, got back onto your vessel, and then gone off looking for Lynette.
Sure, he would have had access to all of his controls, and I assume that at some point he was at the behest of the police officer, rummaging around looking for paperwork and doing things, and presumably it would be easy to turn on his AIS. And this is the first time I've.
So let's paint the picture here. Brian Hooker, probably mildly hungover at 7:15 or 7:45 to 8:45 a.m. the next day. Granted, his alcohol tolerance is probably pretty high, so he's probably used to it. But he washes up. This guy takes him, and he comes out with this fantastical story that just doesn't make any sense. And part of it not making sense was him going away from the light before towards the darkness. But there's many other things that just don't make any sense. But that's what's going on here. And again, he was held for 5 days. They just didn't think they had enough to charge him, so they had to let him go. But I'm expecting something. I think they're going to do something within the next couple months here. I think there's enough smoke to pull the trigger.
Heard you're telling me that on Saturday night at what time the AIS?
9:29 p.m. His AIS went out of coverage. 9:29 p.m. and it remained out of until 8:34 a.m. the next morning when it went back on.
Well, the 8:34 data point is extremely reasonable. I would say, yeah, we were there for that 8:34 data point, but it's a shocking bit of information that his AIS was, I don't want to use the wrong words, but was turned off or disabled.
Out of coverage.
That's
out of coverage is the way that it's logged as the event.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm wondering if you're sitting in the rescue vessel for that hour with the other Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue members and the other police officers. Do you recall any of your observations? Like, did you recall any kind of power event, hearing anything going on or lights coming on or anything at all sometime just before they emerged from down below?
No. Observed nothing. The engine was not cranked. Did not observe. It was broad daylight, so I probably wouldn't observe lights coming on. But there was no indication that there was a power being turned on or turned off.
What? I missed that. Wendy said that JLR is going to do a reenactment in front of Nancy's house. That seems inappropriate, but not surprising. How about that?
When you approach the vessel, sometimes there's motion sensor triggers that turn spotlights on some of these boats. Did any of that happen that you recall?
No, nothing. We approached from the stern of the boat and tied up along the starboard side of the boat, and I did not notice any lights come on.
Well, if the boat had been powered down, that might make sense that there's no power to those lights. So who knows what this event was with AIS? Out of coverage might have meant all power off. Who knows what it meant?
Right.
Maybe the AIS just turned off. We don't know. But the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Jim, when I'm sitting on a boat, I'm usually enjoying.
I think ultimately the reenactment is just a ploy for views. I mean, but again, they can do it. Maybe they think of something. Maybe, I don't know. It's probably just not something I would do. I wouldn't be surprised if the cops get called on them, honestly.
The waves of the view. But if I'm sitting up beside a sailboat, I'm usually looking at the rigging because I'm really curious about, how people rig their boats, how many stays, all the rest. Was there anything about the rigging that stood out to you? Did you see?
Miss Kim said it right. A reenactment of cashing in. Yes. The shadow says that's exactly right.
Cameras or spotlights or any kind of stuff that would have just been sort of, oh, that's interesting.
No, the only thing that I observed that approaches that is that I would say that the boat was tricked out for heavy cruising. It had a lot of solar panels on one side. And when you see the sailing boats here in the Sea of Abaco, you can see very quickly a boat that is set up for an easy sail through the Sea of Abaco, a relatively easy sail back to Florida. They don't have a lot of the more external equipment, but this boat was decked out with more preparation for a more serious journey. I feel like I can remember seeing water bottles or diesel bottles tied onto the deck of the boat. Maybe I'm mistaken there, but that would be a common feature of boats that were rigged up to be a little more heavy duty, and it was certainly rigged that way.
But no feeling like, oh, there are cameras, we better watch our P's and Q's. I can see that we're on camera, or at least these little, what some people call nest or ring cameras set up on the riggings.
Yeah, I did not notice that, but I'll also say I'm not attuned to notice that either.
Well, you're in rescue mode. You shouldn't have been.
Right.
I mean, honest to God, you're looking for Lynette. You're not looking for what a criminal might be up to. So it can be forgiven. That's absolutely for sure.
A couple of days ago, I was watching some videos, and I observed, I watched a video of an expert who says, here's how you tell when somebody is lying. They have a pretty detailed story, and they're good at explaining the details to the story. And if you ask them about the details, they're very insightful. But if you ask them a question adjacent to the story, then it stumps them. And when I saw this video a few days ago, it made me think of us understanding a pretty detailed story of what happened that night. But then when I was on the deck of Fire and Rescue, literally quizzing him, did she fall out here or was it closer to here? When she fell out, did she swim to this piece of land or that piece of land? And as you know, as I've mentioned to you before, he said, I don't know. I'm just so confused. And
so he couldn't answer the questions about questions adjacent to the story. He came up with a story in his head, and he was able to tell the details of that story, but then he wasn't able to relate it to the questions. And he would just say, oh, I'm so confused. Interesting. I could see that being the case. And again, and that depends too, because people that describe abusive situations, sometimes the person that's like really angry, the abuser, they don't really have specific reasons sometimes. But again, other times when they're spinning a yarn, they will have more specific answers. So one of the reasons why it's important to not paint with a broad brush, because it depends, right? All of that depends. So this guy is saying Brian didn't have answers to the adjacent questions. Interesting.
It made me, when I heard this video, that it made me feel like he was presented with a question that he hadn't worked out his story for. And so he had to say, he was only able to say, I don't know, because he didn't have that piece of the story worked out. Another thing that makes no sense.
Shadow, what do we have here? An investment into the Hootie Snack 500 from Chatty Cathy. Shadow says, thank you so much, Chatty Cathy. Shadow also says, have fun on your date tomorrow. So thank you for that, Chatty Cathy. Shadow and I really appreciate it. For everyone else, likes are free. So is subscribing, by the way, also free. And thank you very much for all the support that we've gotten so far.
I don't recall him ever saying that she swam to the sailboat, but I do believe that he told others that she was swimming to the sailboat. I cannot attest to that. So when I was in this area pointing to the land, it's obvious that she would swim. If she wasn't going to swim back to the dinghy 10 feet away, then the land is so close. Well, why would he think she fell out of the boat. His story is she fell out of the boat. He heard her yell something, and he didn't know what she said. Well, why would he think she was swimming to the sailboat since they didn't have a conversation about it? He would think that she was swimming to the closest point, which was the land. Just another example of, he said she was swimming to the sailboat, but he had no reason to think she was swimming to the sailboat. They didn't talk about it, and the land was close.
Well, let me tell you, the discrepancies in what he's told multiple people, including yourself. One version is, I called out to her and I heard her call back, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. And the other version is, I called out to her, but I never heard from her.
No.
And another version is, I didn't know where she was swimming, but yet another version is she was swimming towards the sailboat. And yet here we are, Jim, you and I, sensible people. And even if you're not a sensible voter, they were 150 yards offshore in a very shallow area. It might have been 5 feet. Swimming a little closer to shore, it might have been 3 feet. And they knew that because they had been in this area back and forth multiple times.
Right. And so, the story is so implausible. To me, it shifts over to, okay, how do we figure out how to think about what could have happened, what really happened? And I don't know. I understand. I'm sure you're aware of it. I understand secondhand that someone observed a flare coming from the sailboat, but not the dinghy. I understand someone heard a distinctly loud splash from the area of the sailboat. And I know that person is in contact with authorities. And that in a sense, that's old news.
Well, it isn't actually. I do want to pull on that thread a little bit. There are people who have spoken to authorities who didn't want to speak publicly. Understand, not everybody wants to be speaking to podcasts or speaking to the media at all. But this is information that that there is a witness who saw a flare and heard a commotion and a splash.
It's actually 2 different people in the same area, but yes.
Can you expound on that a little bit more?
One person saw a flare come from the boat, from the area of the sailboat. A different person in the same group heard the splash.
And they were close enough to be able to hear that?
Yes.
Were they on land or on a boat?
Yes, land.
On land. Was it dark when that happened?
I saw a photograph from approximately, it was dark when that happened. I was mixing stories. It was dark when that happened.
So I have a report that approximately 8 p.m. was when a group saw the flare and more than one person saw the flare. Is this a different, do you recall
No, I think
differently?
that's the same group that we're referring to.
Yeah. And did more than one person see the flare, or just one person saw a flare and another person heard the splash?
As it was told to me, one person saw the flare. I never spoke to that person. So that is secondhand information to me. I did speak to another person in that group, and that person told me they heard the splash.
Did they hear any screaming or fighting?
No, that was the only sound that they heard. It was extremely loud and distinctive. A big splash into the water.
And that's why they remembered it, because it would be odd at 8 o'clock at night for anyone to be jumping in the water. Did it sound?
What do you think the splash was? I mean, I don't know what it was at this point, but do you guys have any opinions on what that splash was?
Like it was a person going in the water, or something like large equipment going in the water?
She didn't, made no reference to characterizing the sound of the splash other than being a very, very loud splash.
Was there any other recollection of that time, that moment right around 8 o'clock at night?
No. My understanding was that the splash was a little bit later.
This event, what the witnesses saw, is in the darkness.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think, what could it have even been? What's going to create a loud splash? I mean, I don't think humans even. Maybe a human falls wrong. Maybe that would create more of a splash. But what else is going to create a splash? I really don't know.
Correct, Jim? There's nothing happening in the light.
Right.
But
In my
you saw a picture. Sorry, you saw a picture at 7:47 p.m. and I've seen the same one, and it is dead calm. I mean, it is lovely. The weather is beautiful, and there's not a ripple.
That is correct. We must have seen the same photo.
Yeah. And it would be shortly after that, little more than, say, 10 minutes later.
I mean, if shark comes up and it's like wagging its tail fast, yeah, that can create a splash. Is it that loud of a splash? Maybe. I'm not ruling that out either. Depends how big the sharks are, right?
That the witness saw the flare.
I can't. The flare was the secondhand story, and so to me it was secondhand, and so I really don't have a sharp timing on that.
And even though it's secondhand, did they say the flare went straight up into the sky or laterally along the water, which would make it hard for other people to see it?
It was said to have gone horizontally across the water, or sideways.
Horizontally. Well, that makes a lot of sense, because we've not been able to figure out how a flare could have been seen by a witness that wasn't seen by all the other houses that look out onto the Sea of Abaco, all of the other boats at anchorage. I mean, flares are a big thing. They signal distress.
Right.
And so if it went laterally, that would be easy to miss.
Yeah. In my understanding, my perception at the time, and I can't remember the qualitative parts of the discussion or conversation, but my sense at the time was that the flare was seen something like 9 to 9:30, but I can't back that up from conversation. That was my sense of the conversation.
That's in direct competition with another story that says the flare was seen around 8 p.m.
Yeah. And as I say, I'm talking about something that was told to me secondhand that I personally didn't ask a lot of follow-up questions about. So it may be that, so I just don't know.
But the splash was definitely around 8.
No, the splash was definitely later, maybe even past 9:30, because the person I was talking to said that the surroundings had become quiet so that one would have been able to hear a splash. Prior to that, there was more general commotion, just general island life commotion on the land.
So the splash was after 9:30, when things had become more quiet and the splash would be easier to hear.
Yes.
Wow, that is a lot of information to process. Just super alarming, but also fitting into a puzzle that, that we've been working out. And that puzzle increasingly does not fit Brian Hooker's story.
Right. Yeah. And this goes to me, this goes so many data points there. The story is so implausible. Now it's trying to triangulate on what really did happen. And so if a flare was shot in sometime after 8 o'clock, and if there was a distinctly loud splash sometime later than 9 o'clock, maybe 9:30, then those are.
Now that would be an interesting experiment, right? Figuring out what the splash was, whether it's sharks, anchors, people, and then having the people say, okay, which sound was the most similar to what you heard? And maybe that kind of reenactment would actually be helpful.
extremely compelling data points in what might have actually taken place.
Yeah. Was there anything else that those witnesses said adjacent to these reports of the flare and the splash? And no fighting, no loud noises, nothing else that sort of just was an interesting data point?
No, that's really 100% of what was said. I've heard, unrelated to these conversations that I have had, I've heard really, I would almost classify it as idle conversation or idle chat that, oh, someone said they saw people on the boat. But it was so idle chat and so far removed from a source. It could be true, but I don't think that I was at all close to who actually may have observed that. And more specifically, the people that I'm talking about right now made no comments remotely related to that. It was only a flare from the sailboat and a very loud splash.
Because it was also dark. It would be hard to see anybody on the boat at that point.
It would have been dark.
However, listen, game over. If anybody made it back to the Soulmate boat and got up on board, game over.
Totally.
We already know Brian's story isn't true. It's just a matter of proving it
Right.
with empirical and hard facts
Right.
and evidence. But I'll tell you that this boat next door, Azura, this has been such a mystery. Has anyone on the island talked about Azura? Has anybody been able to find Azura to their knowledge?
I've seen it posted on a local Facebook page here to try and pass the word, but I've not heard any conversation about it.
Yeah, we can't find Azura anywhere. We found a lot of Azuras, and we've even knocked on the hull of a few Azuras that had already traveled down to the Virgin Islands, and they were quite surprised to hear people looking for them, but they weren't the right Azura.
Right.
Azura means light blue in Italian, I believe, and so anybody who's got the faintest light blue hull likes the name Azura for their boat, and so it's made it very hard for the Coast Guard and for people like us to find those neighbors to see if they heard or saw anything.
Right. As I recall, there were not a lot of boats in that anchorage from where Soulmate was south toward Tahiti Beach. Sometimes that area really gets filled up with a lot of boats. And as I recall, there were not, it was, as far as the season goes, it was kind of light for the season on that day.
Do you recall as you were pulling up that next morning on Easter morning, if there was a neighbor close by?
My memory is that there was no boat I'm pretty confident there was no boat to the north of Soulmate, and the next boat to the south, I would not describe as particularly close.
That's interesting because Azura was north. From the photographs that we've seen, right off of Burl Ives' old home, which is right there on the shore.
Right.
Azura was parked right in front of there, and you're saying
Burl Ives isn't that the dude who was singing in was it Frosty the Snowman or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is what Burl Ives would do.
you don't recall any keelboat like Azura parked right there in front of Burl Ives' home.
Yeah, that's right. And I thought about that, how that could, how the puzzle pieces could go together. And sailors wake up early, these kind of sailboat cruisers, and there could have been a sailboat north of Soulmate, and they could have just, per their own sail plan, they could have just left early and were gone by the time we got there at 7:45.
Or they could have left the evening before for a different anchorage.
Yeah.
Just hard to know, when that neighbor was there. Jim, you have just been such a wealth of information, and you've been so helpful right since day one. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You're a saint. Thank you for everything that you've done for Lynette Hooker. We are a community now, bonded forever. You, me, and everybody else watching.
Yeah.
We all want justice for this mom.
Darlene and Carly. Darlene called me about a week ago, and you can just imagine she's trying to get some sort of certainly all the obvious things of clarity and resolution, but she's so far away from clarity and resolution. She's just trying to get literally some texture to grab onto, because she's drifting. I can only imagine she's in a house up in Michigan somewhere, and she has all of the long daylight hours with very little information, new information. So she constantly only has old information. So she and I had a very positive conversation, and yeah, it just really makes you feel for the real people of the story of Darlene and Carly. And it's probably not appropriate for me to repeat it, but Darlene, so use your judgment, Ashleigh, but Darlene said the last time Lynette was with Darlene said to me, I told her not to go back. He was going to kill her. And, that's the place where Darlene is. And she had done everything she knew how to do to get Lynette to change course. And for a million complex reasons, that didn't happen. And now Darlene is trying to get something to grab onto, knowing that she had done virtually everything she could.
She did. She did do everything she possibly could. She even spoke with, battered women's shelters for advice about how to get her daughter to reconsider returning back to Brian, which she had done many times, and had a ticket March 11th to leave him again.
Yeah.
And I just so wish she had used that ticket,
and
she would have been there for Mother's Day.
And anybody who's engaged with these kinds of dynamics knows that is so difficult for a woman in those circumstances, to be able to pull away. And there's so many layers of
no one knows. No one knows the shoes they wear.
Right. The mental handcuffs, the mental chains are so overwhelming. And obviously it was just so tragic in this regard. But to the extent that it makes a difference, as I've said, there are so many people who are feel compassion toward Lynette and toward Darlene and Carly, that to the extent that people are able to help, they want to help and feel a connection.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for everything you've done. And I know that we're going to speak again.
Okay.
Thank you, Jim.
Take care. Thank you.
So there you have it. My extraordinary thanks to Jim Todd. So much clarity, so much new information that just proves Brian Hooker is lying. So what else are you lying about, Brian? Where's Lynette? Tick fucking tock, buddy. If you know anything, I ask all the time, dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. If you have any information you can add to what you've learned tonight on this episode, dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com. You can stay anonymous. We work all of your tips. They have been unbelievably helpful. Nathan, you have been amazing in your searches. I can't even begin to name everyone who's been so incredibly helpful. And Jim Todd, you're one of them. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and all of the hearts of everybody in this community. Thank you for being a part of this. Don't forget to subscribe and please join our membership as well, because this has become a real village for Lynette Hooker and everybody else who we cover, because victims of crime, and I believe Lynette is a victim of a crime, they deserve justice. They deserve to be heard. They deserve our attention. They deserve to be found. And they deserve for the perpetrators to go down like a sinking sailboat. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Don't forget, truth isn't just serious. It's drop dead serious.
Shadow says,
This is the big breakdown.
off with his head, is what Shadow says. He said, you think the Queen of Hearts was trouble. Wait till Shadow's in charge. Off with his head will throw Brian Hooker in the dungeon. Holy mackerel. Carrot cake with cream cheese icing. I prefer vanilla icing, user, but I can tolerate cream cheese icing as long as it doesn't taste like cream cheese and there's enough sugar in it. How about that? But all right, folks, that's really all I had for tonight here. Shorter show, only a couple hours tonight. Got to get my rest up for these new shows this week. Some big interviews to do this week and some people to ask to be interviewed. So those are all the things going on. Yeah, and I guess that is true, isn't it, Rooster, that 7-Eleven does have the individual carrot cakes. Wawa, we have Wawas out here on the East Coast. You West Coasters don't have the Wawa. Ellie knows about Wawa, though. To the Jabberwocky. Feed it to the abominable snowman of Burl Ives in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Now, there doesn't have to be a body. If you ever read Matt Murphy's book, they do a murder case where they anchored a couple deep into the Pacific. No body, but they had eyewitness testimony, so they got him. So Mavs, Julie Bug, Ellie, Autumn, Dana, Rooster, Wawas are Shadow and I's favorite, by the way. Mavs and Hubby, of course. User, Miss Kim. Thanks for modding, Miss Kim. The only mod here tonight, actually. No Laura or Songbits or my buddy Livin. Got to get on her case. Jackie, have a great night, Jackie. Christy, great night. Dee, Dana, Brian, everyone. Risk, who I've seen earlier. Brian. Wawa is like a 7-Eleven, which is like a Sheetz, which is like a small convenience store, I guess is what we'll say. Wendy, Snoop, have a great night as well. PK, keep on rocking and rolling, PK. Good night, Jackie. Shadow says good night as well. Shadow says good night to everyone. Thanks for the investments in the Hootie 500. I'll take care of Livin'. Don't worry about that. We'll whip her into shape. Yes. So we'll see. Hopefully she's here this week. But all right, folks, that's all I got for you all. Make sure you've liked the video and you're subscribed to the channel. And tell a friend or five about the flock of black sheep and the school of Pisces fish. Tell them what a great time we have in here. And I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow night. Julie Bug, have a great night as well. Teresa, so long. Nanny Goat, I forgot you were here, Nanny Goat. There you are. And Julie Bug, yep, Sheetz. Pennsylvania has Sheetz and Wawa. Now there's Royal Farms too, which is kind of like a Wawa. That we don't call this place the Chuckle Hut for nothing, Snoop. And remember, laughter and blasting some music, some of the best forms of medicine out there. Yes, Christy? Nah, not too harsh. But all right, folks, we'll see you all tomorrow night. The Chuckle Hut. Rooster is a headlining act at the Chuckle Hut. So is Shadow. And so is Christy, by the way.